critical thinking in the Western world is on a steady and terrifying decline. But what if I told you there's a very logical explanation for all of it, and not all hope is lost? Today, we're diving into echo chambers, fake news, and why people refuse to believe things even if they're true. So grab a snack and get comfy, because what we're about to uncover today might just change your perspective on the world. I think a lot of us have really benefited, including myself, from social media, but as we all know, it exists in dualities. Social media and the internet as a whole can show you both really wonderful true facts and logic, and it can also show you a dog pile of dog shit and misinformation and disinformation. What you end up seeing and believing oftentimes reflects that of your social conditioning. Uh-oh. If you're a liberal living in Silicon Valley, you're most likely to see things that represent a center-left viewpoint and praise technological development. If you're a Republican in the Deep South, you're likely to see praises of Donald Trump and criticisms of city life. If you're a leftist in Los Angeles, you're likely to see atrocities across the globe and revolt against AI. Algorithms pick up on those interests and continue showing you more and more of the same things because they know that you engage with it, and it'll keep you on their platform longer. This creates what's known as an echo chamber. Echo chambers, for the uninitiated, are communities, usually online, that reinforce a person's beliefs and don't challenge them at all. It's a space of people saying the same thing over and over again, making each other feel good for believing the same things. Man, I hate grape jelly. Oh yeah, me too. Nice, nice.
I like bones.
Why are you still here? This study by Matteo Cinelli et al. Talks about the echo chamber effect on social media and suggests that social media essentially just puts horse blinders on us. It stops us from seeing new worldviews, thus creating echo chambers. I highly suggest reading it because it goes really, really deep into all of the guts of this whole thing, but I'm not gonna do that because this video will be 6 years long. So I've put all of the links to all of the studies that I've read in the description if you want to read more and do all of the work that I did, but the point of this video is that you don't have to do that work. The most important takeaway from this study is that it shows that essentially every single platform has its own echo chambers, and they kind of take their own forms. The study looks at different social networks and the leanings of their users and essentially organizes them into heat maps. You can see on Twitter and Facebook users falling into different camps, Facebook being a lot more polarized. Bright areas show a lot of users in a particular belief system, and dark areas show less users in a particular belief system. So bright means that a lot of people believe in that specific thing, and dark means less people believe in that specific thing. You get it?
Okay, so it's editing me here, and I did a very bad job at describing that. But the point is, brightness in this map means that you believe in this very specific criteria of this thing. So anyone could follow this exact criteria. If it's a darker spot on the map, that means that there's a little bit of variance. So we could say, like, I believe that apples taste good and are big, right? But if you believe that apples are big and also red, like I do, but you don't think they taste good, you're in a darker area. Does that make sense?
As you can see, people tend to be pretty insistent and specific in their standings. This shows that people on Twitter are generally center on this topic, but have pretty hardline opinions and a lot of people in their network echoing their beliefs. Whereas Facebook is insanely polarized with more people in right-wing spaces than in left-wing spaces, and not a whole lot of variance in opinions. These charts represent echo chambers. These big bright spots essentially show us that each platform has a very clear, very dense agenda, and most users believe exactly the same thing. If we saw a bright white line halfway up and all the way across horizontally in the chart, that would mean that each platform is completely unbiased and every user has their own unique beliefs, which doesn't happen at all. This now feeds into a couple other parts of this whole ordeal. Journalism sucks and fake news is crazy. We're all familiar with fake news. Well, fake news turns out to be part of a much bigger conundrum that I absolutely do not have the time to explore fully, so check the description for all of the sources if you want to learn the ins and outs of all that. But we're gonna do our best. The crux of the fake news epidemic is that journalism was taken out back and shot in the head a couple of decades ago, and then the pandemic happened and dug up its body and put it through a wood chipper. A really, really good article by Seth David Radwell on the Fulcrum about the American Schism in 2024 talks all about this whole thing, and I highly, highly, highly suggest you give it a good read. But in this specific article, titled The Rise and Fall of Fact-Based Journalism, Radwell brings up the concept of yellow journalism, a style of reporting that prioritizes sensationalism over facts. Austin, what do you mean was? I guess I forgot to mention that yellow journalism was a thing in the 1800s. Ha. Well, in the late 1800s, Joseph Pulitzer, yes, the prize guy, bought the New York World newspaper and made it so that it was publishing like less not so shitty news. This created a trend that actually saw the death of yellow journalism in the early 20th century. We saw universities create journalism schools, a sanctioned industry, regulations in journalism, and news outlets that disallowed the press from influencing the journalists or publishing stories that enriched the owners of the publications and their agendas. Sounds like journalism was a really robust industry full of checks and balances. So what the hell happened? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan happened. As if slitting the throat of economic prosperity for the common man wasn't enough for him, Ronald Reagan established the FCC and repealed the Fairness Doctrine. The Fairness Doctrine required that people holding broadcast licenses, i.e. newspapers and news outlets, to present controversial issues of public interest with fairness and neutrality. So, yellow journalism just came right back. We don't call it that anymore, but that's what it is. Not only that, but thanks to the rise of the internet, newspaper classifieds, which were considered the journalists' training ground, completely disappeared as newspapers closed left and right across the country. So you mix almost literally no regulations on what media outlets can say, with America losing almost 2/3 of its journalists over the last 20 years, and you get a shitload of people just saying whatever the hell they want very publicly and very loudly. As a result, we've entered a landscape where the news is hyper-sensationalized and oftentimes just straight up lying because there's no repercussions at all for it, so that they can line their pockets and make a fatter paycheck. 2/3 of people aged 65 and up and half of people aged 30 to 64 have reported seeing fake news on the internet every single day. That is a lot. The silver lining here is that apparently people have become a little bit more skeptical in recent years about what they're reading on the internet, so they're trying to fact check more, according to a study on security.org. This same study asked people how often they verify news posts and political posts they see on social media, and 30% of them say that they verify less than half the time. So there's kind of a discrepancy there, huh? Ironically, this study by Ceylan, Ian Anderson, and Wendy Wood in 2023 found that the biggest spreaders of misinformation aren't lazy or dumb, they're just habitual. The study essentially suggests that you see something that gets you going on your phone and you habitually share it, not because you're malicious or dumb, you just didn't think to fact check it. It was a habit. The researchers found that users' habits sometimes doubled or even tripled the amount of misinformation that they were sharing on the internet. Their habits were more influential in sharing fake news than their political beliefs or an agenda or their lack of critical thinking skills. This is essentially to say, for example, that someone whose thing it is to share reprehensibly outrageous things from other people on Twitter is far more likely to share that thing because it elicits the same response as all the other stuff before they even think to question its validity. It's just a habit. The sheer volume of sharing creates an effect on both the true and false information that they share. Participants with stronger habits were less discerning about headline veracity. In this account, habitual sharers spread misinformation just because strong habits limit attention to accuracy. Think of it like this. You share things that make you mad because you want to spread awareness. The more you do this, the more you share things that make you the same type of mad regardless of whether it's true or not. You don't even consider its accuracy, you just trust it because it looks like all the other stuff you share that is true. So people report that they fact check what they see on the internet, but then the science shows that people are just habitual sharers, so that's also conflicting. And now with the rise of AI and how convincing it's getting, we're about to enter a whole new wave of misinformation and habitual bad stuff sharing. It does seem like post-pandemic, people have opened their eyes quite a bit to how much bad information is actually out there, but it also kind of seems like people don't know what information is good or bad information. For instance, you may see a carousel infographic on Instagram that looks super convincing because it's got a good design and it's got a lot of sources and likes and engagement, but there is a non-zero chance that it's not telling the full story of what it's talking about. Maybe this isn't fake news, but it is absolutely sensationalizing, or at the very least, misrepresenting the news, which is arguably more harmful and actually kind of harder to spot. For instance, we've all seen those carousels about how AI is terrible for the earth and using ChatGPT deserves you the gallows, right? Well, how many of you looked that up? If you spent more than 10 minutes researching and verifying, you may have come across this insanely long and very robust study by Andy Masley from the agency Effective Altruism DC that explains to you that while the figures are real-ish, it's not the whole story, and an individual using ChatGPT in a normal and casual capacity is about the same energy cost as leaving your lights on when you go grocery shopping. Or this study by Ritchie, who originally posted a study about how AI is bad for the environment, but then found out kind of the same stuff as what Andy reported. The truth in this case is that, yes, AI is bad for the environment, but not because you're using ChatGPT. It's because the training costs a ton of energy and it's being used for things like the government and private sector that we have no control over whether it does or doesn't happen. Not using ChatGPT because of the environmental concerns around training it is about the same as not shopping at Walmart because they sell cheap plastic shit and instead opting for Target. Now, I'm not here to have a conversation about AI's ethics or whether or not you should be using it. I am here to make an example that these infographics leave out this kind of information. Maybe not deliberately, deliberately, but definitely negligently. Even if the facts are right, they may not be representing the full truth. AI is bad for the environment, but it's not because of the individual using it. You understand? This isn't limited to just AI either. It's pretty much any cause you see being spread around. The people forming these posts have to keep the message short and sweet so that it can get spread and easily digested, so it's not entirely their fault. They're playing the game of the platform. It's not always sinister, but it does absolutely perpetuate the same misinformation issues as more reactionary or extreme and deliberate lying does. Now, to circle it back to the previous point about social media and echo chambers, you see people in these communities sharing things on the internet and forming opinions about stuff that isn't even fucking real. And that's not even a partisan thing or a matter of intelligence. Just you wait. These echo chambers are bad enough when they're full of people who are sharing things that are true, because they allow no room for dissent or alternative viewpoints. Now imagine these echo chambers filled to the brim with fake or understudied or exaggerated news. It's a room full of really loud voices and they're all speaking gibberish. And the worst part of it, it's not even necessarily their fault. It's just reinforcing their natural human hardwiring. Hardwiring? What do you mean? Well, now we get to one of the deepest layers of the critical thinking crisis: human psychology. You see, us fleshy folks have these predispositions to certain psychological phenomena. This actually took me a while to understand because the way this stuff is often worded makes it seem like it's a response to a stimulus or a reaction or some sort of a choice, but it turns out that all of the things I'm about to talk about are just defaultly hardwired into our brain because of evolution or something. These things are as followed: cognitive bias, desire to maintain a consistent self-image, and belief perseverance. Cognitive biases are predictable patterns in the way people think that can keep you from objectively weighing evidence and changing your mind. Some of the basic ways your brain works can also work against you on this front. This essentially means that we all have hardwired patterns of thinking that are so close and ingrained to us that we just unconsciously are often unable to go against them. Have you ever had that thing happen where you buy a new thing, maybe it's a red truck, and then all of a sudden you start seeing red trucks fucking everywhere? Cognitive bias, baby. That one's called frequency illusion. There's a bunch of different cognitive biases. They all do different things, and they all play into how we naturally respond to things that challenge or confirm our beliefs. These aren't denial or copium. These are actual neurological mechanisms that allow us to make decisions and process information. Desire to maintain a consistent self-image is also a pretty innate thing. Our brains have a pretty set interpretation of who we are. There are synapses. Think of them like little bridges connecting points that send signals between each other and make up our identity. When something comes in to challenge our beliefs or worldview, these synapse structures respond as if we're being physically threatened. The brain interprets these challenges as attacks on our personal identity and responds by releasing cortisol. The cortisol flood then impedes your ability to logic or reason or think critically, and you enter a state in which you are physically unable to receive the new information, even if it's true.
Fuck you, pickles are not green.
This then causes your amygdala to light up like a Christmas tree. That's why when someone challenges something that you believe strongly to be true, you may become agitated or frustrated or sad. Your brain essentially goes, holy shit, I'm being attacked, please make it stop, get me out of here. So then it's very likely that your brain just rejects the new belief and any provided information in an effort to protect itself from the perceived attack. This automatic subconscious rejection is what we call belief perseverance. Not only does belief perseverance keep you within your rigid belief system, but when that rigid belief system is so ingrained to you, you're likely to continue using it instead of the newly corrected information. This is called the continued influence effect, and it's essentially the brain saying, I know my original belief is wrong, but I'm gonna keep going with it because it's the easiest to access. Or even, this is new information and I don't want to hear it. Similarly, if you win a debate or find yourself within social conditions that echo your beliefs, your brain says, oh yeah, I'm right, this feels real good. And it strengthens those neural pathways. So this creates a perfect storm for obstinance. You know that, you've been there. Think about it. Let's bring Fred back for a minute. Fred lived his entire life in the rural American archetype. He knows literally nothing else. His life has been a real-life echo chamber for 50 some odd years. His neural pathways and synapse structures are thicker and stronger than bridge cables, so his defense systems are more aggressive than the Iron Dome. If someone were to challenge his belief that, say, there's more to life than football and beer and raising your kids, he'd likely just become resistant and either not listen or get frustrated with you. Depending on Fred's temperament, I didn't get that far or think that far ahead, he may get either, annoyed and shrug and let it go, or he may get frustrated and become dangerous. It's not really his fault. He has these cognitive biases that have been strengthened for years, and this challenging of these beliefs only makes them stronger. This is why it's so goddamn hard to get through to some people. Not only are people living in socioeconomic bubbles that shape and reinforce their ideals, but the new media and the internet make those bubbles virtually impossible to penetrate and infinitely smaller. Now, if Fred had adopted the use of Facebook and Gab, his demographic's most common platforms, he's also in online echo chambers reinforcing his beliefs nonstop. It was bad enough when everyone in town was the same way, but now he has access to an entire world of people, and he can see what people think even when he's not near them. Fred went from his beliefs and cognitive biases being strengthened only when he was at church or at the bar, to now his cognitive bias is being strengthened any single time he's on the internet or on his phone. Then you add the fake news and misinformation crisis and the new media landscape, and you have a recipe for disaster. The new media landscape, you say? Remember that whole thing about yellow journalism? That's not relegated to independent outlets on the internet and social media accounts. It's also got its claws in the mainstream media like CNN and Fox News. You see, as misinformation and sensationalized headlines showed to get more traffic and engagement on the internet, mainstream media caught on. They understood that fear and half-truths were far more likely to hook people than boring old facts. So they followed in the footsteps of their digital brethren. Now you can turn on a news channel on your TV and see, at best, reporting that doesn't represent full truths, and at worst, hellishly biased sycophants screaming at each other over shit that isn't even real. And there are no repercussions. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. And with 41% of people consuming mainstream media every day, this is a problem. People very much still do trust mainstream media. If they didn't, it wouldn't still be the juggernaut that it is today. The previous study from security.org gives us kind of a general snapshot into all of this stuff, with the caveat of we don't know how this study was really performed, like what the sample demographic was, and there's the fact that it was all self-reported. We have no idea if this was a legit scientific study or not, which leaves tons of room for bias. Even with that heaping pile of salt, we can still get a general idea. We see here a list of the political parties. We see here a list of the mainstream media outlets that the two political parties trust the most. But when we check their credibility and bias, we see that there's a misalignment. How can people say that they don't trust the mainstream media, but the mainstream media that they do trust and watch has mixed factuality or a pretty strong political bias? It doesn't add up. And this shows why the misinformation crisis is worse than it may appear. People don't think they're being misinformed. And if they do, when they fact check, they might not actually be checking credible sources.
I just saw some posts saying if you look at squirrels for too long, they'll explode.
Yeah, it's actually crazy that you believe that. Well, fine, let me fact check it. Aha, see? It's true. We're reporting that we see misinformation all of the time, but do we actually know that? People may be seeing things that they think can't be true, but it actually is, and vice versa. We have entered this landscape now where if you don't know how to fact check, or even that you should in the first place, you just don't fucking know because you're confused and you're trusting your social and cognitive biases to guide you. So after all of this media madness, you're probably left wondering, what does this look like for a real person? Well, Billy is about to show us exactly that. Next week, you're gonna watch Billy fall for every single conspiracy theory online. All of them. And as you'll learn, it's not really his fault either. But before we get there, let's talk about why all of this really matters. There's way more to the death of critical thinking than meets the eye. We've seen all of the structures in place that can create this Ouroboros of shit, and any one of them can distance someone from critical thinking skills. It doesn't have to be the whole cocktail. Just being plugged into mainstream or social media enough can be enough to get you to fall victim to the dumbing, especially if you've never really needed or developed these skills before. Hopefully these last 2 episodes have helped you kind of reframe the way you see the people that drive you nuts with their reactivity and word vomiting. I'm not asking you to be less annoyed, but hopefully now you can see it with a little bit more empathy. It's oftentimes not their fault. If we approach things with care and understanding, we are far more likely to have a positive impact on the world around us. But that's what episode 4 is all about. If you've made it this far and learned something and enjoyed yourself, do me a favor and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be giving you a play-by-play of what happens in these situations, and then also how to help someone that you know that might be deep in that kind of situation. And it will be very valuable for you to learn, even for yourself. And if you missed how we got here because you didn't pause and watch episode 1 like I asked you to at the beginning of the video, you can watch it right here. And also YouTube thinks you're gonna like this one. So, you know, give me some views, please. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.